Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Looking at the stack of research we have for today, I really feel like we are about to pull on a loose thread that unravels the entire sweater of modern spirituality.
That is a very specific metaphor, but I mean, it definitely fits. We are going way off the beaten path today.
Way off. Because usually when you talk about yoga or meditation or, really any spiritual practice, the goal is pretty clearly defined, right?
Right. You want to ascend.
Exactly. You want to reach samadhi, nirvana, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. You want to merge with the universe and feel infinite bliss. That is the finish line.
And in almost every tradition, especially the ones that have become so popular in the West, that state of oneness is the absolute peak. It is what you spend decades striving for, the gold medal.
Well, today's source says you're wrong. Not only is that not the finish line, but it's actually a trap. A massive, glittering, blissful trap.
Which is quite the bold claim.
It really is. So we are looking at a transcript and a series of teachings from a fascinating thinker named Osman, often referred to as the blind Muslim yogi. And his central argument is that those states of infinite bliss are the final frontier, like a massive test that most people completely fail because they get addicted to the fireworks and forget the actual mission.
And to really grasp why he says this, because it sounds almost sacrilegious to a yogi, we have to look at who Osman is, because his profile is basically a walking paradox.
Paradox is putting it lightly.
Mm-hmm.
Let's break down his resume for you guys. On one side, he is a bioenergy healer, a telepathic healer, and a yoga teacher with over 50 years of experience. He talks about chakras, energy knots, and kundalini with the precision of a surgeon.
Right.
But on the other side, he is a devout Orthodox Muslim. And usually those two worlds do not mix at all.
They really don't.
You have the energy crowd talking about the universe and vibrations, and the theology crowd talking about God and Scripture. And Osman is just sitting right in the middle, trying to thread this very tiny needle.
And that combination is what drives this whole deep dive today. He isn't just theorizing about these mystical states from reading a text book. He claims to have actually hit samadhi, that state of intense absorption and ecstasy, when he was just 19 years old.
19. I mean, I was barely figuring out how to do my laundry at 19.
Yeah, same here. But his conclusion wasn't, I've made it, I am enlightened. His conclusion was, this is dangerous, and frankly, this makes me useless.
Which is such a wild reaction to experiencing ultimate bliss. Just, I am useless. So our mission today is to really unpack Osman's worldview. We're going to look at his technical theory of the three knots in the body, his incredibly controversial take on how reincarnation fits into Islam, and finally, why he believes the ultimate ego trip is claiming to be God.
It's a fascinating synthesis of mechanics and theology, and we really should start with the mechanics, because Osman approaches spirituality almost like a technician or an engineer.
He gets very granular. He argues that before anyone can even think about awakening or having these big spiritual realizations, they have to deal with the physical and energetic hardware first. He talks about three knots, or granthis.
Yes, granthis. In yoga tradition, these are considered very difficult hurdles. They aren't just, tension like a tight shoulder from sitting at a desk. They are energetic valves that are basically fused shut.
So where exactly are they located?
He identifies three specific locations. The first is the Brahma Granthi at the root chakra, so right at the base of the spine. The second is the Vishnu Granthi at the heart chakra. And the third is the Rudra Granthi at the third eye, right inside the brain. And Osman argues that for the vast majority of people, these knots are incredibly tight. They are totally locked.
And he knows this because he works as a healer. He describes physically, or I guess energetically, trying to pry these open for people. And he tells a story about a client that really puts this into perspective. He was working on unblocking this client's heart center.
Right. And you might think, okay, a little Reiki, some deep breathing, maybe 20 minutes, and we're good to go.
Not even close. He says it took 18 days.
Wow.
18 consecutive days of 1-hour sessions just to break that single knot in the heart region.
That really highlights the density of these blockages. Osman describes them as deeply entrenched. It's not just about having bad vibes, It's a structural issue in the subtle body. But the fascinating part is what happens when the knot finally does break.
Yeah, describe that, because remember, Osman is blind.
Exactly. He says when he breaks the knots, and he notes that he often works from the top down, starting with the head, people report seeing lights.
Interesting.
And not just vague flashes. He describes them seeing fantastic colors, beautiful geometries, and lights they have literally never seen in the physical world.
He calls it seeing through the mind's eye.
Correct. It triggers this immediate physiological shift, deep relaxation, a sense of opening. It's like the circuit finally completes itself.
Okay, so that's the standard process. You have the knots, you do the work, or you hire Osman for 18 days and you break them to get the lights. But here is where the story takes a really weird turn. We mentioned earlier that Osman hit samadhi at 19.
Right. This is the big anomaly that basically defines his life.
He says he started a mantra practice, nothing secret, just a standard repetition someone gave him. And within days, he felt bliss. Within 2 months, he just dropped completely unconscious into samadhi. He describes waking up overwhelmed with tears and ecstasy, literally unable to speak for an hour.
A classic textbook mystical experience.
But the mystery, as he puts it, is that he didn't have the knots. He didn't have to spend 18 days breaking his heart open. He slid right through.
Right.
So he asked himself, how is that possible? If the system says every human has these knots, and I didn't have any, what happened?
And his deduction here is really where he starts to diverge from orthodox Islamic thought. He approaches it with this cold, detective-like logic. He says if A is impossible and B is impossible, then C, however improbable, must be the truth. He concludes the only logical explanation is reincarnation.
Which, I have to pause and say, is a massive curveball for a devout Muslim. Reincarnation is not exactly standard curriculum at Friday prayers.
No, not at all. It is generally considered heretical by mainstream scholars. But Osman argues that spiritual progress is strictly cause and effect. It's physics. If he didn't have the knots at 19, it's because he must have done the work in a previous life and essentially just picked up where he left off.
But he knows this gets him in trouble. He actually talks about debating this with his AI companion, Grok. I absolutely love that detail.
It's so modern.
Right. This blind yogi debating theology with an AI. He is literally asking the AI to pull up Quranic verses so he can stress test his own theory.
He digs really deep into the theology to find a loophole. He brings up a specific chapter, Al-Mu'minun, or the believers. There's a verse there that is traditionally the nail in the coffin for reincarnation. It describes the dead asking God to let them go back to Earth to do good, and God basically says, no, there is a barrier behind them.
Hard stop. No return policy.
Usually, yes. But Osman looks at the title of the chapter, The Believers, and he applies a very lawyer-like interpretation. He says, look, this rule applies only to believers.
And how does he define a believer in this context?
Someone who has attained moksha, liberation, someone who's finished the game.
Ah, I see where he's going. So his argument is, if you've graduated, you don't come back. The no applies to you because you're done. But if you haven't graduated, if you're still working through your knots,
then you are stuck in the cycle. He argues you keep coming back until you get it right. He uses this to bridge the gap between the yogic law of karma, which is circular, and Islamic judgment, which is linear. It's a very pragmatic, almost mechanical way to reconcile two very different systems.
So in his view, he came back because he hadn't finished the job yet. He had cleared the knots in a past life, which is why he got the fireworks so easily at 19. But this brings us to the central tension of the episode. He attains this samadhi, this ultimate bliss state, and instead of saying, I've arrived, he says, this is a problem.
This goes back to that concept of ecstasy overload. I think we need to clarify what he means by bliss here. We aren't just talking about feeling happy or relaxed after a nice meal.
No, he uses extreme language.
Yeah.
He calls samadhi an atom bomb of ecstasy. He explicitly says no drug on earth, not cocaine, not alcohol, not heroin, compares to the sheer dopamine dump of this spiritual state.
Which, to the average listener, probably sounds fantastic.
It sounds incredible.
Hey.
Sign me up for the atom bomb of ecstasy. Why on earth would anyone consider this a trap?
Functionality. Osman explains the reality of living with that atom bomb going off in your nervous system. He says, literally, you can't function. If you are in that state, you can't pay your rent. You can't focus on a spreadsheet. You don't care about your career or your family obligations. You just want to give all your money away and sit in a corner smiling at the wall.
It's the ultimate distraction. It's almost too good.
Exactly. He highlights the incompatibility of that high spiritual state with the demands of everyday modern life. He says now when he feels that wave of bliss coming, and he says it comes often, he actively shouts, stop, internally.
He suppresses the enlightenment.
He forces himself to come back down because he wants to live a normal life. He doesn't want to be, as he puts it, lost in the sauce. He sees that bliss not as the goal, but as a byproduct that can actually derail you from your real purpose.
He also issues a pretty stark warning about what happens when this energy, this kundalini, wakes up too fast or in the wrong way. He talks about the channels in the body, the nadis, and this part felt very specific to our current moment in history.
Right. So In yogic theory, you have the right channel, the Pingala, which is solar and heating, and the left channel, the Ida, which is lunar and cooling. Osman warns that if the energy forces its way up the right channel too aggressively, it causes extreme body heat.
He meant literally, right? Like an actual fever.
Literally.
Yeah.
Fever, sweating, boiling blood. He suggests the body can't handle the thermal load and it can actually be fatal. But the left channel is where he connects ancient theory to modern problems.
This was the part that made me sit up. He blames the global anxiety pandemic on the left channel.
Yes. The left channel is associated with the past, with emotion, and with the subconscious. Osman argues that an overload there leads to psychosis, depression, and deep anxiety. And he identifies a very modern culprit for why this channel is blowing out for so many people right now.
Screens.
Precisely. He mentions people spending 6 to 10 hours a day scrolling. He believes this constant digital engagement, this passive absorption of information, is forcing the left channel open without the person's control.
So he's saying that doom scrolling isn't just bad for your attention span. He thinks it's energetically hacking your system and causing a literal spiritual injury.
That is his exact diagnosis. He calls it an involuntary opening. You aren't doing the yoga to open the channel. The phone is prying it open for you, and your nervous system is flooding with anxiety as a result.
It's a fascinating, if somewhat terrifying theory. It frames anxiety not just as a mental health issue, but as an energetic malfunction. But let's zoom out a bit. We've talked about the mechanics of the knots, the experience of the bliss, and the dangers of the energy, but this all leads to his biggest philosophical point, the final frontier. This is where we get into the controversial stuff about God.
This is the absolute core of his argument. In a lot of spiritual circles, especially in non-duality, Advaita Vedanta or even high-level New Age thought the ultimate realization is supposed to be, I am God.
The idea that there is no separation, I am the universe experiencing itself. Atman is Brahman.
Right. You realize the self is an illusion and you are the ocean. Osman calls this BS.
He uses that specific term. He does not mince words.
He really doesn't. And his logic is rooted in what philosophers call the logic of finitude. He poses a very simple test. If I can perceive this experience of God, if I can describe it, if I can feel the bliss, if I can see the light, then there is a me who is observing the it.
That's hard to argue with. I mean, if you were looking at the painting, you can't be the painting.
Precisely. He argues that because he is the observer, he is separate. He is finite. God, by definition, is infinite. Therefore, the finite cannot be the infinite. He believes the experience of oneness is real, like a drop merging into the ocean, but claiming, I am the ocean, is the ultimate trap of the ego.
He asks this really funny practical question, too. He calls it the broke God paradox.
Oh, I loved this part.
He asks, if the soul is God, why did it forget? Like, is God playing a prank on himself? And more importantly, why is this so-called God now broke, hungry, struggling to pay bills, and begging for food?
It completely cuts through the mysticism.
Right. If you are the all-powerful creator of the universe, why can't you find a parking spot?
Exactly. For Osman, the humility of the human condition just disproves the claim of divinity. So he prescribes the neti-neti approach. It's a Sanskrit term meaning not this, not this. Even when you hit that bliss state, even when you see the lights, you have to say, this is not God. This is just an experience. You have to reject it to go higher.
So if claiming I am God is the trap, and the bliss is just a distraction, what is the truth? Where does he actually want us to land?
Worship. For Osman, the highest state isn't becoming God. It's recognizing there is a supreme being separate from you and bowing down.
He brings up the story of Hanuman here from Hindu mythology. And I think this analogy really clarifies his position because he is using a Hindu deity to explain his Islamic submission.
It really does. Hanuman is the monkey deity, incredibly powerful, the ultimate devotee. The story goes that after his great service, he was offered any gift. Status, power, merger with the divine. He could have been equal to God. And Hanuman refused it all. He said, I just want to remain a servant. I want to be a worshiper.
And Osman mirrors that in his own life. He says that's why, despite all his yogic mastery, despite being able to unblock chakras with his mind and hit samadhi, he prays 5 times a day as an Orthodox Muslim. He values the relationship, the duality over the merger.
Yeah.
He wants the connection, not the identity.
It's a total shift from I am the power to I serve the power.
He actually uses this analogy of video games that I found really helpful for understanding this.
Yes, the RPG analogy.
Right. He says mantras, energy work, yoga. These are basically like weapons or power-ups in a video game. They are tools. You use them to clear obstacles, to heal your body, to fix your mind.
Yeah.
but they aren't the point of the game.
So you get the sword to fight the monster, but the sword isn't the mission.
Exactly. He says use the energy work to clean the vessel, fix your health, clear your anxiety, but use Islam or your faith to fill the vessel with humility. He sees energy work as a technology and worship as the purpose.
He ends on that famous poem, Footprints in the Sand.
Oh yeah, we've all seen it on a greeting card or a poster at the dentist's office. It's usually a bit cheesy. But the way he retells it feels very personal to this idea of surrender.
It definitely lands differently with him. He paraphrases the dream, where a man sees two sets of footprints, then only one during the hardest times of his life. The man asks God, "Why did you abandon me when things got tough?" And God replies, "I didn't abandon you, I carried you."
And for Osman, that proves the duality.
Right. In his hardest moments when the bliss was completely gone, when he was blind and struggling, he realized he wasn't God failing to manifest reality. He wasn't the universe failing to expand. He was a human being, small and finite, being carried by something greater.
It's a very different vibe from the manifest your reality, you are the universe messaging we usually hear in the spiritual space.
It really is. It's a call to humility over empowerment, or rather finding empowerment through humility.
So let's recap Osman's position because it really is a unique synthesis.
Mm.
We have a man who uses the technical tools of yoga to break the knots of the body and mind, the hardware fixes.
Right. He is basically a technician of the soul.
But he views the resulting fireworks, the telepathy, the bliss, the lights, as distractions, or even dangers that make you useless to society.
Yes. They are the final frontier, the last trap you have to overcome.
And his conclusion is that the goal isn't getting high on the spirit. It's coming back down to earth, paying your rent, functioning in society, and bowing your head to something bigger than yourself.
That's the crux of it. He's arguing that the modern spiritual pursuit often tries to escape the human condition entirely. We want to be one with the universe because being a person with bills and anxieties is hard. Osman suggests that the harder, more authentic path is to accept your smallness, to function in the world while maintaining devotion.
It really makes you think about what we're actually chasing when we do these practices. We spend so much time trying to ascend or transcend, but maybe the real test isn't how high you can fly.
Maybe the real test is how well you can land.
That is the question. A provocative thought to leave you with. Is the modern spiritual pursuit of becoming one with the universe actually just an attempt to escape the responsibility of being human? Is your spirituality helping you escape your life, or is it giving you the humility to actually live it?
Something to mull over for sure.
Indeed. That's it for this deep dive into the world of the blind Muslim yogi. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.